Continuing our conversation on to sell or not to sell national assets. We'll even talk about which of these national assets, but that'll be in a moment. Let's get to Mark, where she has a question to get in. Mark, where?
Definitely, there are some people who, for them, I mean, when they hear the word sell or privatization, it immediately raises a red flag. Only yesterday we had a guest in our studios who talked about, capitalism and how for them they always believe that it has not yielded anything. It doesn't protect the people, as it were. And he gave some examples that, for instance, he talked about how electricity has been privatized, how has it helped, and he gave some other instances. And so it would seem that what we're coming from, there has been very little trust. I think that's one key word. Very little trust between government and the people, especially when it comes to privatization. How do you think the government can actually prove or, make its case this time around or earn the trust of the people that this particular process is in the best interest of the country?
Thank you very much, Bakwe. I think the issues are essentially for government to earn the trust of the people. The government must deliver on what it says. So if we are going through a privatization process, which is why I am insistent that this particular privatization or sale of asset arrangement we are discussing, I'm insisting it goes through the proper channels, through the NCP, through the BPE. Let us, the people of Nigeria, monitor the process. Let us flag any irregularities that we notice. Let us hold the bidders accountable. Let the BPE say to us, these people, I am measuring them on the scale of their post-acquisition plans, and they are living up to par or they are below par. If they are below par, certain critical actions must be taken against them. And we, the people of Nigeria, have to make a lot of noise.
Mr. Rotimi, you did raise... You talked about how, government needs to sell assets that are not working. Yes. But in some instances, we've heard that government might be putting up for sale assets that people deem fit to be working. So, for instance, we did hear that the NLNG, I think it was Aliko Dangote who suggested that the LNG be sold. And only today we're beginning to see that government is contemplating selling at least 5% of its shares in NLNG. Is that the kind of sale that you're anticipating? No, what I expect government to do should be to focus on institutions, on companies that are essentially have constituted themselves into a drain pipe on the national treasury. There are a lot of companies today that the Nigerian taxpayer is keeping afloat. Those companies should be sold, and there are a variety of methods through which these companies can be sold. Nigerians can actually become shareholders in these companies. They can be listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and the general investing public in Nigeria can participate, and those companies will then run as private sector entities based on strict corporate governance rules and all of that. With regard to potential sale of stake in LNG, personally, I do not support that. It is a company that is thriving. It is a company that is delivering dividends to the Nigerian people, and those dividends have come in very, very handily in the last, in the last year or so, and will continue for the foreseeable future. That is a company that is running to commercial norms. They have a commercial orientation, so I certainly will not be supporting the sale of any of our interest in such a company.
I think Mr. Rotimi, you just touched on what some people have highlighted over the weekend, saying that if you want to go into such, they must be on enterprise that are not that viable. For instance, if you say you want to buy our airports,
correct,
you shouldn't be looking at the Abuja airport, you shouldn't
correct,
be looking at the International
correct,
Airport in Lagos,
correct,
you should be looking at those other small airports, perhaps maybe Sokoto Airport, Enugu Airport, Benin Airport, and put in your investment. How is it that that's not the thinking, but now people are looking towards like the NLNG? We knew that it even gave the nation some kind of bailout funds, meaning it's a thriving business,
correct,
that the people there are managing pretty well. So why can't they look towards those that are not too viable and put them for sale?
Well, Sulai, the issue is this. As we speak, I am yet to hear or read of any categorical statement from the government regarding the specific assets to be sold. So it is still back to this failure of communication. It is still back to this lack of structure and process. Let the entities that are legally, constitutionally empowered to carry out these functions, let them come out, brief the Nigerian people, share their agenda, list the companies to be sold, list the specific quantum of shares or stake in those companies that will be sold. List the methodology for the sale so that all Nigerians can monitor and follow the process. Because the privatization process that we follow in Nigeria, it's governed by strict World Bank guidelines, and it is governed by transparency. So the opening of the financial bids, the opening of the technical bids, all of them are done publicly. Right? The criteria for evaluating the bidders will be shared with the public. So I think that is a very transparent way to go about it. So let the government empower those agencies and let them tell the Nigerians what specific assets they seek to sell, and dispense with a lot of this speculation and a lot of the rabble-rousing that's going on.
Because, I mean, government agencies have been saying at different times that sale of national assets will help fund the budget. And people wonder, wait a minute, which budget are we talking about? 2016, that it's almost gone? And so, but, I mean, today you see in the dailies, there's this $8 billion fabrication assets wasting and lying around. Nobody's talking about that one. And then they say, look, even if you were thinking about selling some assets, look at the PIB.
Correct.
Nothing has been done about it. If we had a very good PIB, you should have leveraged on that for the oil licensing rounds, and that one leaves us safe, because if they're not performing, you could always get that back with your licensing rounds. But nobody's talking about that.
Correct. I hear you. You know, when privatization, the second phase of privatization started in 1999, one of the things the NCP and the BPE did was to start with regulatory reforms. So for the telecom sector, a lot of work was done on sector reforms, and that resulted in the NCC, in the Telecommunications Act, which created the NCC, which superintended the most transparent auction we've seen that gave us 4 GSM companies. We moved telephone lines from 400,000 to almost 150 million active subscribers today. Now, for the power sector, we started with BPE also drove the process, energy sector reforms that led to the privatization. Now, Malcolm said something earlier that people are saying the power sector privatization has not been a success so far. I think there are a number of things around that. The first thing has to be the role of government as the regulator, as the superintendent of that industry, the NERC. Have they been sufficiently empowered to actively supervise and sanction bad behavior amongst the privatized entities? We also cannot be unmindful of the fact that government itself and their agencies, the military, are owing these privatized entities almost 100 billion naira in unpaid bills for power they have used and are still using but are not paying for. So there are a lot of issues around the private PHCN privatization. So I think it's too early to say it has not worked. There are some hurdles that they are grappling with, but my view is that competent private sector entities any day of the week will deliver higher value than the old regime of public sector management.
Okay.